Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody who's out there tonight to what is the third community meeting for the City of Cupertino's Housing Element Update. My name is Luke Conley. I'm the Senior Planner with the city, and I've been managing the city's Housing Element Update. So I appreciate all of you who could come out. This is the third meeting. We began these series of community meetings in May, and we also had a meeting in July. A lot of you may have been familiar and have attended those meetings. I just want to say this meeting will be following a similar format to the earlier meetings we had. By that, we will have the city's consultant team of EMC Planning and West Valley Community Services. They will be jointly running this meeting, and the format will be similar in that we're going to have a panel of people who will be talking about housing and housing affordability and their experiences related to those items. And we'll also be featuring breakout rooms if you attended either the May or July meeting, and the format for the breakout rooms will even be slightly expanded from what we had in July. Also similar, we're going to have a pretty focused schedule. So we're beginning here at 6:30, and we're going to try to wrap the meeting up by about 8:15. When we'll be following that schedule as closely as we can, but there should still be plenty of opportunity for discussion among the group. And with that, since we're trying to keep this meeting focused, I'm going to be turning the meeting over to Kylie Clark, who will be our lead moderator this evening with West Valley Community Services. So with that, turn it over to you, Kylie. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Luke. Hi, everyone. My name is Kylie Clark, and I'm the Public Policy Coordinator at West Valley Community Services. Thank you so much to all of you for being here tonight. We're really excited for this. And like Luke said, it's the third of 3 community meetings. So our last hurrah, and we think it's going to be a really good one. So thank you for being here. So we have a few goals for the evening. We want to gain a better understanding of the housing barriers and challenges faced by 2 groups of people. So first is people who work in Cupertino but can't afford to live here. And second is people who own a home in Cupertino but are otherwise low income. So these are 2 groups that we haven't really heard that much from yet while working on the housing element. And it's also kind of hard to find these people, even though there's so many of them. So we're really lucky to have some panelists who fall into these groups today. We want to engage in some dialogue with our neighbors, and that'll happen in those breakout rooms Luke mentioned. And then we want to learn how to get involved with the housing element in Cupertino. This is our agenda for the evening. So at 6:40, we will enter our first round of breakout rooms. Those will last 10 minutes. At 6:50, we'll begin our panel, and that'll last 50 minutes. And then we will do our second round of breakout rooms. And by 8:15, we will wrap it up and say goodnight. It's also important that we have some community agreements going into this, because we're all going to be engaging in dialogue with one another. And I know people hold different opinions when it comes to housing, but there are 8 community agreements that we are going to enter into with this meeting. So first is use I statements. Second, step up, step back. So if you normally talk a lot, then try to make some space for others. And if you normally don't really participate, try to be a little brave and say some words. Third is what's said here stays here, what's learned here leaves here. So we want everyone to feel comfortable sharing, and maybe there will be some personal information shared in those breakout rooms, and that stays there, but whatever you learn absolutely leaves here with you. 4 is assume people's best intentions. 5, listen and don't interrupt. 6, it's okay to disagree. We're going to disagree, but we need to do so respectfully, which is number 7. Next is engage in conflict resolution in a constructive manner, and your facilitator in your breakout room will help with that. Second or 7th is respect everyone's different experience with different subjects, because knowledge is a privilege. And the last one is just uplift each other and check in on each other. So we're going to begin with a few opening poll questions. So please just go ahead and answer these as best you can. The first one is, how aware are you of people who work in Cupertino but can't afford to live here? So we'll give you all some time to fill this out. Go ahead and click the best response for you. So we have some people who are not at all aware, some who are somewhat aware, and it looks like it's pretty evenly spread with pretty aware and very aware. So that's great. Going into this, we'll have different expertise that we can share and we'll all learn. We'll go on to our next poll question. The second question is how aware are you of people who own a home in Cupertino but are otherwise low income? So this is great. There's nobody who's very aware, which is exactly why we're doing this. And we have two panelists who are very, very aware because it's their own experience. So I'm very excited for that. And now we have another poll question. There are three more. Have you ever experienced housing-related challenges such as housing insecurity, trouble paying rent, eviction, or homelessness? So 56% said yes, 37% said no, and 7% said prefer not to say. And this is great. This is exactly why we do these community meetings, is we want people here who have experienced those challenges with housing to be able to share and still learn from each other. And then we want people who haven't experienced them so that they can learn. So that's super exciting. Okay, here's our next poll question. How often have you joined this kind of public meeting about planning policy? Okay, so 18%, this is your first public meeting, so welcome. Thank you for coming. We're so glad to have you. A lot of you have attended some public meetings, so that's great, and thank you for coming here. And then 21% of you regularly contribute at public meetings, so thank you for that contribution. That's awesome. And now we have one final poll question. Which, if any, of the following groups would you consider yourself to be a part of? And this is multiple choice, so if you consider yourself a part of multiple of them, you can select both. So 57% of you, about half, said none of the above, and about half of you are a low-income homeowner or a Cupertino worker who doesn't live in the city. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. And that's super great for us to know going into this. Okay, so now we'll go to the next slide. And I'm just going to briefly cover what a housing element update is. We had some more information about them at previous community meetings, but tonight we really want to focus on time for you all to chat with each other and to hear from the panelists. So very basically, a housing element update is required by state law, and this is in order to make sure that California has the housing capacity that it needs, and that, as we all know, it's lacking. So it's an element of a city's general plan. It's the only element that needs to be approved by the state, and it's updated every 8 years. And this is Cupertino's 6th cycle. So this housing element will be for 2023 to 2031, and it'll shape what housing looks like in Cupertino over those next 8 years. And the number of housing units that we're required to build is determined by the regional housing needs allocation, called RHNA, given to a city. And all of the cities in California were given a number, and so is Cupertino, and that's how we decide how many units we need to plan for. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and go into breakout rooms. So we have 10 minutes for this breakout room, and there's just one question we want you all to answer, because we are going to have you all go into the same room with the same group of people during the second round. So just get to know each other. The question is, what is your name and why did you choose to come to this meeting tonight? So you'll have about 10 minutes in this breakout room, and we'll go ahead and send you to those right now, and we'll see you back here soon. Welcome back, everyone. We're just going to give folks a second to roll in, make sure everyone gets back from their breakout room. I see a lot of cameras on, which is awesome. I hope that you all got to talk with each other and enjoyed that. Okay, it looks like everybody's back. So we are going to go ahead and move forward with the panel. Andy, if you could go ahead and share your screen. Thank you. All right, so it's time for our panel discussion. We have 5 wonderful panelists with us today. So we have Angelica, who's a De Anza alumni and an educator as well as a commuter. So she'll be providing that perspective. We have Carly, who is a teacher at Cupertino High School. She's been teaching there for 12 years, and she's a commuter. We have Carol Kahn, the executive director of Project Sentinel. Very happy to have her with us today. We have Cassidy, who's a low-income homeowner and a community member. And last, we have an anonymous community member who will be talking about what it's like to be a low-income homeowner. And he has decided to stay anonymous for this panel, and I think it'll become clear why during his questions. But we'll go ahead and get started. So Andy, you can stop sharing your screen, and we have spotlighted the panelists. So You should be able to see all of them. Hopefully it'll be in speaker view. All right, so we're going to get started with the panel. So the first question is, tell us a little about yourself, 1 or 2 things you would like the participants to know about you, and why you agreed to take part in tonight's panel. And Angelica, we'll start with you.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Angelica, and my pronouns are she, her, and ella. And yes, I am, I consider myself a commuter into Cupertino. I was a student at De Anza College, and now I am an educator at De Anza College. And so since 2009, I've been a commuter to Cupertino because I was a student, and then, I got my bachelor's and came back and started working. So I've been at De Anza and working in Cupertino for a long time, and have been, kind of having that experience of commuting through all of those years as the commute times have changed, traffic has changed, and all of that. So I've been doing it for a while. And something to know about me is I do a lot of work around students and families who are immigrants, and I'm involved in the immigrant movement. So a lot of the experiences that I know and will probably touch on some is also from the experience of those who are immigrants, specifically undocumented, which housing can be very hard. And so I'll be sharing a little bit about that, and, because it's something that I do work with outside of being an educator and supporting students and my colleagues. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angelica. That was great. We'll go ahead and have you answer next, Carly.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kylie Stavis. I am, as was introduced, a 12-year educator at Cupertino High School. And I guess a couple things that would be important to know about me in this context. Number one, I'm also the child of 2 career educators who taught in this area and bought their first house in this area for $60,000. And it is obviously worth quite a bit more than that now. But with that has come the realization that their daughter, who they're really proud of for becoming a teacher, doesn't really have that in her path. Like, that's not a reality, even after working for 12 years in the Bay Area, to be able to afford a home in this area. My partner is an artist and graphic designer, and there is just not housing that's really made for people like us, that are 2 people who are doing work out of passion and not for money. And I've also just been, for my 12 years, a huge advocate in my district. I'm sure that's why I got asked to be on this panel tonight by one of my bosses, for trying to figure out these housing solutions for teachers, especially young teachers, because that is when it was absolutely the hardest for me. And without some of the privileges of family support, there is no way I could have even become a teacher, literally because of the cost that it takes to pay rent, get through school, and not get paid for an entire year as you're a student teacher. So that's a real deep area of passion of mine, is thinking about what we do for young teachers to get them into this profession.
Thank you, Carly. Yeah, we're so excited to have a teacher on this panel, because that is such an important group that is commuting really far distances a lot of the time. So I'm excited to have your voice included in that. Carol, why don't you go next?
So thank you, Kylie. I'm Carol Kahn. I'm the executive director of Project Sentinel, which is a nonprofit charitable organization that does all kinds of housing work. I'm here really first and foremost as a resource and a service provider. We have extensive programming in all different areas of housing, not the least of which is homeowner housing issues and problems. There's a wealth of education and materials we have to help stabilize homeowners if they're experiencing financial distress, if they're worried that they're going to fall into mortgage default. And then on the other side, we also have pre-purchase programs for those who maybe like Carly one day will be a first-time home buyer, and getting everybody, getting somebody in that space ready financially for what it will take, and obviously educating around any kind of special loans or programming that might be available given what their status, if they're veterans or otherwise. So we have a couple of other different very large departments and set of services we do around dispute resolution for landlords and tenants who are sometimes escalated, which can lead to evictions. And so we're really in the preventative space there, trying to disrupt that cycle. And the other area we do a lot of work in is fair housing. So we're really at that civil rights space, working to remove barriers to housing because of discrimination. So those are the sort of main areas, and just really happy to have been asked to participate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. Yeah, Project Sentinel is an amazing organization and a very valuable part of Cupertino, and Carol's an amazing leader of the organization. So we're very happy to have you here. Thank you. Maureen, how about you?
Kylie, is this like an introduction of oneself?
Yes, yeah. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are here tonight.
Oh, okay. I've been in a Cupertino residence for pretty long. It started with the children going to school here. And why I am here tonight and joined the meeting is that because I want to make sure that it's affordable for other people too, like the one that works here, they should be able to live here, So that's why I want to hear, and I'm open-minded, but I'm really like, I know a lot of people couldn't live here and I feel really bad for them. I want to see a solution.
Thank you, Maureen. I completely agree. And last anonymous community member, why don't you answer the question?
Yes, hi. Good evening, everyone. I have been in Cupertino with my family since, or maybe for 14 years now. I'm a computer scientist, technology entrepreneur, and also a former executive of a number of big companies. And the reason I decided to participate is basically, I believe we have a unique story which involves a combination of a number of situations that are related to low-income families. And because of the fact that I have been working as a scientist and also educated as a scientist, I have been taking notes on my own. I have also been reaching out to a number of organizations, government organizations, institutions, in my effort to bring attention to some of the challenges related to people with low income, specifically in Cupertino. And then the second is a number of changes that are required and are needed to happen so that people who end up having a low income and living in Cupertino, they are better equipped to face the challenges that are ahead of them, as they live in the city. So that's it for me.
Thank you. We really appreciate you being here tonight. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to our next question. So we're going to start with a question for the homeowners. So Maureen, an anonymous community member, and the question is, how long ago did you come to own a home in Cupertino, and what has changed since then? So anonymous community member, if you want to go first.
Yes, we've been living here for 14 years, a little over 14 years. And many things have changed. I guess number one, from the construction side, there has been a sizable changes. I mean, we see the Apple campus. It wasn't there when we came. The downtown or Main Street Cupertino wasn't there as well. a number of stores have already left the city and new stores are here. Also, the city has upgraded many of the streets basically, and has done a number of public renovation to a number of parks and things like that that we have seen. The main change that we see overall is becoming heavily populated, extremely crowded, especially at schools and for any kind of like place where you seek public service, including even the post office. Everything is just, you feel how the city is becoming heavily populated everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure other people here can relate to that. Maureen, do you want to go ahead and answer and let me know if I need to repeat the question?
Yeah, please repeat the question.
Yes, no problem.
I don't have the note in front of me, from the email. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no worries. I'm happy to repeat. So how long ago did you come to own a home in Cupertino, and what has changed since then?
You mean how long ago since I owned the house?
Yeah.
I would say about 12 years. And what was the next question?
And what has changed since then?
I become low income.
Mm.
Yeah. So that scares me a lot. But of course, I'm really like what they call. I don't eat out. In other words, I really watch how I spend. I want to make sure that I have enough to pay all the bills and the mortgages, and especially like when the tax time comes, that property tax, that scares me a lot. But yeah, it's not easy. But I just, I try not to overthink and just put one foot in front of the other and just go like that. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and even without rent, those property taxes are really rough.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go to the commuters. So that'll be Carly and Angelica. And the question is, how far do you commute in order to work in Cupertino, and why don't you live in the city? So Carly, do you want to go first?
Sure. So first of all, by no means do I have the worst commute of all of the teachers I work with. I would say I have a pretty average one, but my commute is typically between about like 30 and 35 minutes each way. So definitely about an hour of commute time to go about 9 miles from where I live. And I was sharing in the breakout room, a lot of that has to do with outside forces. Like, for example, we are on a schedule this year that can't start before 8:30 a.m. That's a state mandate for high schools. That has like drastically changed the game for teachers, because we used to be able to get out at 3 p.m., which has drastically lower traffic at that hour. And we could race home and prep at home, and it was kind of okay. And this year we are not getting out multiple days a week until 3:50 p.m., which is a huge change to the commute. So it's around 35 minutes every day. And I guess why I don't live in Cupertino, I mentioned before, is partly cost of living. I have a partner who works out of our home and needs space that's set up for that. I needed space that was set up for that for the last couple of years of teaching at home, and to afford what we have in terms of space here in downtown San Jose where I live. That kind of housing doesn't necessarily exist in huge numbers in Cupertino. It's not really situated for people kind of with the needs that we have. So that's been preventative, but it's also really an affordability thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I know as a high schooler, I think I would have loved the 8:30 a.m. mandate, but as a teacher, not so much, for sure. Angelica, what about you?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I've been commuting to Cupertino. Well, actually, I also went to high school and middle school in Cupertino. So I've been commuting to Cupertino for a long time. In my like teens, I lived in Sentinel, which was the, right next door. That's why I was going to Cupertino Middle School and Homestead High School. So it was close enough to where I was within the district where I was living. But that was, a lot of years ago. I think once I started at De Anza in 2009, we started to see like, that was like the first time we started to like consider moving out of even like Sunnyvale, right? And so that was like when I moved away. So I had to De Anza, I had like went from a 20-minute commute to a 45-minute commute, right? When I was a student. And then I left out of the Bay Area and came back and again had to consider like, where do I live? And so basically since coming back and now as an educator at De Anza have always been a renter, and so have always had to consider my commute. And so my commute has changed a lot from 30 minutes to an hour. Has been the longest one way. And that was, it was a challenge because I had to, as a renter, it's like, I usually move between 1 to 2 years, and so every time it's a change, right? Like having to figure out how to get there, what's the best route, and then I figure it out and then have to move again. So it's been a shift in my commute. So currently I have a 25-minute commute, but who knows for how long, because as a renter I will probably move again. And so it just depends where I can afford at the time that I'm having to move. And the reason why I don't live in Cupertino is definitely, cost. It's definitely financial challenges. But I think it's also has to do with, if I were to even like look into home ownership, like no one in my really close circle, whether it's my family or friends or extended relatives, owns a home. So I wouldn't even know where to start. I wouldn't know how to even like do any of that. So there's also challenges of just not even knowing what to do because no one in my immediate circle has gone through that process, right? And so that's also a challenge, and it's also very scary because it's a big it's a big purchase, it's a big deal, it's a big huge commitment, especially because would obviously have to get a loan and just all of that, right? So that's a challenge, both of those, right? Both the finance and the like, where do you even start? And so both of those things are things that I obviously consider when even thinking about that. And I would say that those are the two things.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And we talk about, it's really hard to be a first-gen college student and to have to navigate all of that. But the same goes for home ownership. Yeah, absolutely. Carol, my next question is for you. I'm just wondering, can you tell us a little bit about Project Sentinel and what services do you provide?
So thank you again, Kylie. I think I, in my introduction, sort of mushed things a little, so did give you an overview, I hope, of the range of services we have. So I feel almost like I'll stay with Angelica's. I'll sort of follow on Angelica's heels here to say that Cupertino has a below market rate home purchase program. And in fact, it's interesting, in our home buyer HUD housing counseling program, Cupertino, that is the pre-purchase program, actually is our highest level of activity. So it can happen, and it has to happen in ways that are not necessarily or straightforward. You make a bid on a house and you hope for the best. There are many, there are more programs like this that are called below market rate programs, where there's assistance to try to get in as a first-time home buyer. And then we help provide, as you said, nobody in your family's ever done this. So that's where we come in. We have all kinds of educational resources resources. We counsel you, teach you, get you to not get you, but, have people understand more fully. What does it mean financially for me? What are property taxes? What do I have to be knowing before I sign on that dotted line? So I think, I just wanted to put that forward because, yeah, most areas in the Bay Area, including Cupertino, are almost, too expensive to live in. And yet there are some of these below market rate programs. So that's one of the things that we offer. And I didn't mention and should mention, all our services are for free.
That's amazing, Carol. Thank you. And yeah, this is perfect. A demonstration of the need, and you're there to fill it. So we're really lucky to have you all. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and ask another question of the homeowners. So what are the biggest challenges that you face as a low-income homeowner in Cupertino? Maureen, do you want to go first?
Can I go later?
Yes, of course. I know that we've talked to an anonymous community member about this. So do you want to go ahead and go first?
Yes, sure, Kylie. So the first thing I would say, we need to evaluate a simple question: how do people end up becoming low income in Cupertino as homeowners? Reason this question is relevant is to afford a home in Cupertino. You need to be able to afford a down payment. You need to be able to afford payment of the mortgage. You need to be able to afford many things financially. So anyone who really buys a home in Cupertino, he is giving the fact that the price of the house is way above the national average and twice almost any other house in San Jose. Then there is an amount of wealth and capacity assumed to the person or to the couple who are buying the house, which comes with a level of education, some level of job experience, and all of that. So for someone in Cupertino to become a low income, there should be a reason, and that reason has to be looked at. In my own experience, and I'm going to share a number of situations. The first one is if you have a child with a challenging medical condition, like mental disability. I have had a child who has a mental disability, and it has since then become a very overly consuming situation, and also a very traumatic situation as well. And give you some simple facts. If you are to look for a local clinic who actually is either covered by a private insurance or by the Santa Clara County Behavioral Health for treatment or caring for young children or adolescents who have any level or any kind of mental disability, you will be surprised. In Cupertino, we have zero. So you have to find a place that's somewhere else. And if you are to look for other places, specifically if you come like with a low income, so you have the state or the county insurance, it will be hard for you to find like whoever can take you from San Jose City, for instance, because they give higher priority to children who reside in San Jose. And also they look at you, oh, you live in Cupertino, you own a house. Why are you here? You should be able to afford this. I mean, this is mainly for people who are like low income or from a certain race or something like that. So then if you are to try to obtain to go to private clinics for mental health, you will end up by having a monthly cost that is at the minimum would be around $3,000 a month, which would be simply one visit to a psychiatrist and one visit to a therapist and paying for one medication. If you have more than one medication, if it's more than one visit to the psychiatrist, then it's more than $3,000. And if you take that only into account, then that's just enough to burn a family, because mental disability is a disability. It has no solution. It lasts forever, and until that child turns 18, then you have to basically cover for those expenses more or less out of pocket. Another also thing related to that is, this is my experience with the local schools in Cupertino, particularly the high schools. They come at the very end of the spectrum in terms of understanding, relating to mental health in general. Very uneducated. Their approach is mainly to look at the family as if the family is the source of the illness, especially if you come from a minority, or if you are not from a like either the white race or the dominant races, which are basically the Indians or Chinese. And if you have a different religion, then it becomes more complex, and that basically feeds into the stigma that is being actually that keeps building up. So, and the stigma by itself is a very painful thing, because if you are from a dominant basically race, then you feel at least socially you have some support, or you have a voice when you go to the school. You will find a teacher, you will find an assistant principal, you will find other students who would advocate for you. In our case, we are really a minority, in a minority. So we were actually looked at, instead of everyone and like people offering us help, we will actually being looked at a source of either the illness or people who are unable to care for their child, which none of those is really truthful, because our child actually, the child mental disability was related to a long history of racism and prejudice that the child and the family has faced outside of Cupertino and inside Cupertino. Then another challenge is the local police. The police also, when it comes to mental health, and also when it comes to minority, there is a great deal of prejudice from the police. And I don't want to talk about this, but because it's traumatic for me and for my family. So that's another challenge, is if you end up if the situation is involving the police, again, by being a minority or a different race or a different faith or religion, you are being treated quite differently. Another challenge is actually, which is part of the stigma, is the house. If you are a low income and you want to do a renovation, everything costs lots of money. And the city doesn't give you a discount, because for, fees, like for the permits fees, there are no discounts if you are low income. And actually, I can tell you, like, even if you are low income and you mentioned that, they will tell you then you cannot afford it, then why are you here? So that notion of having empathy doesn't exist much. Everyone is expected here to be wealthy and have a constant stream of money at a certain level that is coming into your bank account every month. Another interesting situation about the house, if you cannot renovate, because if you are to get a contractor, he's gonna charge you double. I can give you names of contractors that once they knew that our address is in Cupertino, the estimate they gave to us for the job was literally double. I have an issue with my appliances, a fridge. It went wrong. I brought a guy, oh, you're in Cupertino. Then he said his hourly rate is basically adjusted based on the city of service. So just the fact that you live in Cupertino, everything will be insanely expensive, even like fees for like repairing the house, renovating the house. And then you end up doing many things yourself. And because you don't have much time to care for everything, then you won't be able to fix everything. Then the house will probably look the oldest in the area. Maybe your cars also will be not necessarily the Tesla type of cars. So you will see neighbors giving you a different look, or people passing by giving you a different look when they see like your house not as equally upgraded as the other houses or your cars. So you feel like the stigma keeps building up because everyone, like most of our neighbors have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to upgrade our houses except us. Upgrade their cars except us. Upgrade everything except us.
Yeah,
So you
thank
feel
you so much. I'm sure if you have more, you'll definitely get a chance with future questions, but I want to go ahead and ask
Yes.
Maureen, what challenges do you face as a low-income homeowner?
Okay, I want to, it's true. I don't like to tell people I live in Cupertino, especially when he say, you know, if you have repair, because my washing machine is just went kapong. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with it, but it's not working since July. And what I do is I try to learn how to repair things. You know, nowadays there's Google, there's YouTube, there's all kinds of things that you could kind of like spend the time and look. And I spend a lot of time looking, learning, and then I ask myself, can I do the washing machine repair? But anyway, I'll put that aside. I always spend too much money asking people to come take a look to see, you know, what's the situation, diagnose it. Meanwhile, I skin it a little bit just to see. But anyway, it's true because yeah, even with acquaintances or people that doesn't know me, I think because somebody told me it's more of acquaintances. He say that don't say you live in Cupertino because they think you're rich, because I'm not rich, no way, not from it. But the anonymous person was saying, I think he has the questions like, how is it that you own a home, but then you also low income? I don't want to go into my personal, what they call things that happened to me to put me, yeah, I don't know, like how much, I just don't feel comfortable.
Oh yeah, you do not need to, don't worry.
Yeah, can I not say because,
of course.
yeah, because I don't want people to think that really, because they think like the gentleman was wondering, how is it that you own a home but you're low income? But it's a long story. And it's so personal that, I just don't want, I'm not comfortable to share it. Yeah. But
oh no, I wouldn't be either, don't worry.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable sharing and being so open about it. And also, yeah, and then he also touched base about the house being old. Yes, I do a lot of things myself. Like I tried, like he was saying that if people look on your, like for me, my house on my street, I mean, I get to know my neighbor. A lot of people on my street, I know them, and I think they kind of like a little bit. I mean, they don't know that I am in this situation. Like, I don't tell them, but like sometimes they can see that. They go, hey, can I go over there and mow your lawn? I said, well, there's nothing to mow right now. It's all brown. I've been keeping it brown like that for ever since we have our drought. But you know, like I know my neighbor was trying to sell his property, and he kind of like, hey, Maureen, can I come over there just to like edge it and this and that? And I go, okay, sure, because I say, I understand why, because he's trying to make it look good so then he could sell his at a good price. But as to like, how can I say, I'm not like, how can I say, I don't let my old car or the way my house is not looking, like
Mhm.
this is built in 1955, so and it's like that, but it's not dilapidated. But I do my best to keep it. What I could do, I do.
Thank you, Maureen. Yeah, and your
Yeah.
perspective is so valuable, and you don't need to dive into how you got there. What matters is where you are and what you're able to tell us based on that. So thank you so much for sharing that. I have a question now for the commuters. It might seem pretty obvious, and I'm sure that, we might already know a lot of them, but I do just want to ask, what are the downsides to having to commute to Cupertino? And Angelica, why don't we start with you?
Okay. I mean, time. I think that's the first thing that came to my mind. Time, gas, wear and tear on my car that I have to, obviously take care of myself. Because there's a lot of people who work that don't get that reimbursed from their jobs, right? So that's definitely, like first in my mind. But the other thing is also that's a little bit less maybe like immediate that you would think of, is just a challenge is just not feeling secure. Like there's a lot of insecurity in terms of like housing, because I am, like I mentioned, I am a renter as well. So there's a lot of insecurity about where I'll be living next, and the reason why that is a challenge for me as a commuter is because I don't know if the next place I'm going to live is going to be too far for me to commute, which then puts me at my job insecurity, right? Like, do I have to leave my job because I can't commute? Like, it would just not be feasible, right, to commute. Or if I have to like leave the state, or, so that all of that is a lot of insecurity that I have to think about, like housing insecurity, job insecurity, just because of both of those things. So that's something that I think about, as I commute, and as I think about like where will I live next. And then, the other one I want to, like I mentioned, I work at De Anza, and so as an educator, my role is to support students, and oftentimes we have students who come out of state, or international students, but also our local students. A lot of our students at De Anza come from the east side because they can't afford to live in Cupertino. And so not being able to live in Cupertino sometimes does put me in a disadvantage, because I don't know what services there are and aren't in Cupertino where I can refer students to, right? And so I have to know services about everywhere in the Bay Area, because students are commuting from everywhere, and also my colleagues, and so it's like, it makes it harder to make sure that I can provide resources to students, because there's so many places that they're coming from. And so, I try my best, but it's definitely a challenge. And so for students that live in Cupertino, it's hard for them to build a community. And sometimes I feel that too. It's like, because, I want to beat traffic. So it's like, I could stay and like build a connection with someone, or with the student or students, and they're just like, I just have to go because I'm trying to beat traffic, or because I need to get to wherever I need to go grocery shopping before I get home, before it gets too dark, right? So, and a lot of them take the bus. So for them, it's like, it doesn't allow for them to build community at De Anza. And, a lot of community colleges are commuter schools, but we're also community colleges, right? Like build community, be with the community. We are in Cupertino, and our students don't even know Cupertino, like the city, right? They don't know anyone who lives in Cupertino, like all of that. It's like affects. And then my last thing is just time with family. I think about my colleagues who have children, and I hear them a lot talking about how, they're not able to spend as much time with family when they live in Tracy, or, or Gilroy, or Los Baños. And I'm just like, wow, yeah, like I don't have children yet, but that's something that does worry me. Like eventually time with family, I mean, time with my parents right now is, I definitely would love to spend more time with them, but in the future, if I have my own family, that's something that I think about.
Just a few downsides. Thank you. It's true. There are so many. So thank you for sharing those. And Carly, do you want to go ahead and answer as well?
Yeah, so +1 to everything Angelica said, and I won't repeat them all, but all of that. And then I guess some of the other things that I would consider maybe more hidden from the average public that are huge communal impacts. I was just sharing with our superintendent a couple weeks ago when he asked how the new schedule was going, that a huge communal impact with teaching is that we have many roles that teachers used to fill that are currently unfilled by anyone. So to give some examples, speech and debate coach, like all summer, we're trying to get a speech and debate coach. That has always been a role filled by a teacher, but it is an immense amount of time to commit that teachers just can't commit right now. So we have nobody doing it. And I could list 7 or 8 things like that this year, just at my one campus that are like that. Various other things, coordinating for intervention teams that support students who are in, non-highly represented demographic groups on our campus that need supports to be able to learn at the levels of all other students. Those programs don't have people that are able to do the after school coordination and things for them. Even with money, time is the issue, right? Because that is the resource that we don't have a ton of, those of us who are commuting especially. So those are like other things that I think we all as teachers value hugely. We love doing those things with students. We love being able to engage with them in ways that are outside of the classroom. I know tons of teachers who love to coach and do all sorts of other things. I'm the yearbook advisor, like that is very real to me, but it's really hard to do that and balance life. And unfortunately, we often have to choose our own families and our joy and ability to have time to regroup and be able to come and do our best job teaching the next day over some of those things that we would otherwise be choosing if we had more time. Another huge issue, like probably a lot of people in this Zoom room are aware that there's like people leaving jobs left and right across the country for a variety of reasons, and teaching is no different. And one of the huge kind of crises coming towards education that a lot of researchers are predicting is a lack of leaders to step into administrator roles, to be on school boards. Those have been really, really, really especially challenging jobs the last few years. And it is really hard. I know this is true in my own district, to get people to even apply to be administrators at the site level. And what happens when you develop teachers like me who spent their whole career in this district, like I'm getting an admin credential right now, and it's very likely I'm going to go take that admin credential to some other districts besides this one that raised me, because that's just a reality of me having to be able to survive and live my life. And so that's like a huge loss too, I think, for school districts, is that young teachers come to Cupertino because the pay is great here compared to a lot of other teacher pay, although I will say still not enough for what I think teachers deserve, but very good in comparison. But when you raise teachers in this like great teaching environment and they're doing all this amazing work, but then at year 10 or year 12, they're like, okay, like it's time for me to get out of here because I can't really have a life in this place for the rest of my career. We lose every year tons and tons of leaders, people who are just leaving the profession and not kind of growing into those leadership roles that I feel like are so pivotal to have people who really know the community in, and then just burnout, like teachers are really, really exhausted. And so this one extra thing to have to think about of a huge commute at the end of the day or the start of the day certainly doesn't help with that. And again, there's lots of factors that lead to that. But I think those are some of the things I think about that maybe aren't as obvious besides just the time and everything.
Yeah, thank you for those insights. I was totally wrong when I said this might be kind of obvious when I started my question. So thank you, both of you. That's so valuable to hear that. And we're really lucky to have you on this panel. My next question is for you, Carol. I wanted to know, what are the biggest housing related barriers and challenges that you see the folks that you serve in Cupertino face?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I mean, I think the theme tonight is the affordability piece. It is overall a barrier, not only in Cupertino, but many, many communities in the area we live. I would say that's number one, and that affordability is informed by many things, or lack of affordability is informed by many things, not the least of which is inventory. And then from there, it could be housing discrimination that's operating in one shape or form, and including in terms of getting a favorable interest rate on your home loan. Who knows? And from there, I do think that's certainly a barrier. And then I also just think there's from our perspective, there's a real gap in just overall education about housing in general. Whether you're a homeowner, whether you're a renter, whether you are renting out part of your home, whether you're sharing your home with a lodger, all the very many ways that people are looking to put together affordable housing and what role you may have in that as a roommate or housing provider. All those bits and pieces, there's need to be wrapped better with education, because there's so many things that repeat. And as the gentleman was speaking to, who's anonymous on this call, there are all kinds of subtexts and other things operating that, when compounded, start to interfere with, that work-life balance, just as Carly and others are speaking to. So I do think those are some of the trends for sure that regrettably are operating and do create barriers to affordable living. And not the least of which too is being able to create and live in harmony with a community, so that you feel that you are literally at home when you're at home. Those are also really important factors that, again, with more awareness and more education, I think could be remedied as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that theme of community is so important. And part of the reason that we wanted this panel and to include people who work in Cupertino but can't afford to live here is you're contributing to the community without being able to benefit from also living there. And I think that's really, really important. Okay, so these panels are never long enough. We always want to hear more from you all. And I'm sure, we hope to continue this conversation and everything. But now I just want to give each of you 1 minute to say anything else that you want to. So if there's an idea that you have that you really want to make sure you share, or something that you were hoping to say that you didn't get to, just really, really briefly go ahead and say it. And so we're going to start with you, anonymous community member.
Yes, and first I'd like to thank you, Kylie, and the team at WVCS for giving me this opportunity. There are lots of things to be said. So in the interest of time, I would say, as the previous ladies spoke perfectly, we need lots of education when it comes to tolerance and establishing the sense of community. My family and I, we need to feel safe for being who we are, safe for having a child with mental disability, safe for making a choice to be low income, because that was the only option available for us to care for our children. The second thing, I believe within the city of Cupertino, there should be, like San Jose or other cities, there should be some go-to organization or office that would understand the needs of homeowners who are low income, and also some kind of like exceptions that are provided or discounts or something in terms of making it more affordable, especially when it comes to some of the things that the city can have an influence or control over the cost of the service.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Completely agreed. Angelica.
Yeah, I'll just say, I forgot to mention one other challenge, and this is just, in general for all of for the world, is that a huge impact of commuting is the climate, right? Because we're commuting, we're coming from far away, so there's little accessibility for transportation. And so we're having to drive, right? And that affects the climate. And that doesn't just affect our generation, but it's going to affect generations to come. And so that's, you know, obviously that's really scary, and something that's a huge, huge impact. And I'll just, you know, say that it was an honor to be able to share space with the rest of the panelists. And, you know, I have been involved with housing stuff in San Jose and in other areas, other cities, but I just feel really kind of inspired to do more work in Cupertino, because it is, you know, it is where I've been commuting to for many years. So I'm invested, and this I know will affect the students that I work with and that I serve. So I'm just really thankful for planting that seed together in the space, and we'll see where that grows.
I love to hear that. Thank you. Yes. And yeah, housing is absolutely a climate change issue. I say that all the time. That's super, super true. Maureen, any final words from you?
No, I'm just listening, but I really, no, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, your perspective has been so valuable. So thank you for everything that you shared tonight.
I don't even know where to begin. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can definitely keep talking more after this too. The conversation does not end here by any means. Yeah, Carol, go ahead.
Thank you, Kylie. I do want to thank everybody on the panel, and for you all to, you know, for having put this public meeting together. It's been really, really good. And I guess I'll close by saying, you know, at the same time that we provide a lot of education and support and financial counseling and otherwise, we also have embarked on a partnership with a company called Silver Nest, which is looking into what it means to get into arrangements where there's a home share, which sounds like one of the ways, in fact, to achieve affordable housing. And part of that, there's a lot of win-wins on that score for a homeowner that needs financial support to be able to stay in their home and without all the guilt and worry and everything else that comes with having distress around mortgage and other things. And also avoiding isolation in a community, avoiding the feeling that you are really bereft and on your own, the companionship, again, with the right match and everything. And that's where Silver Nest comes in to try to really work with people, do background interviews, all kinds of things to try to match those who are seeking affordable housing, who can't afford typical rents in an expensive area, and homeowners who likewise would benefit. So when we are speaking with homeowners around whatever it is that might be prompting their call to us, whether it's mortgage delinquency or other things, we're now also recommending or otherwise providing this resource for people to look into. It's not a, you know, something for everyone, but it's a very interesting proposition to create that sense of community, not being as isolated, and being able to lower, frankly, the threshold both for the homeowner and the renter in terms of affordability. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Silver Nest sounds like an amazing program. And yeah, for those of you who in the opening poll marked that you identify as low-income homeowner, that's a great resource that you might want to look into. So last but not least, Carly.
So a couple of the things all of you said made me think of what I would want to end on. And I guess the first thing would be just emphasizing that I feel privileged to have a home, quite honestly, because when I look around my own community in downtown San Jose, when I look at people on the side of the road, when I'm coming to and from work every day, like, I just hope, I don't know what the full scope is of all of these meetings in Cupertino, but that's a hope I have in my own community where I live, and a hope that I have for Cupertino as well, is that that's not forgotten in this conversation, that teachers are people that most people would be happy to have as neighbors. And I don't think everyone's always treated that way as neighbors that they would be happy to have. And if we're really thinking about like what deep community looks like. The unhoused are a really important community to think about, and they are definitely among us in Cupertino, and I think that's really important. And then I guess the other thing that I would just add is, and Carol, what you were talking about with Silver Nest was making me think of this, is from a teacher perspective, I just think having lots of different options is so important, and really being creative about all different kinds of ideas, because even if one project only serves a few people who have a very particular need that's met by that one thing, if there's lots of things like that that are happening that can fill those needs, that especially for teachers, there's wide ranging needs. What I needed when I was a brand new teacher living by myself is different than what I want now, or what I think about wanting for a family. I would quite frankly be happy with someone handing me property and letting me set up a little tiny house on it, but that's not going to work for everybody. So I would just kind of push that be something on the radar too, is that even small projects that seem small are huge for the people that it gives stable housing to, or a place in the community. And so I just hope that lots of creative solutions like that are part of the future in the Cupertino community, because I think people have lots of different needs.
Thank you. Yeah, I think those creative solutions we're going to need in a crisis of this size, and the housing element's an opportunity for things like that. So yeah, thank you. And thank you so much to all of you. We're so grateful that you came here tonight and shared all of that with us. We really, really appreciate it. So now we're going to move on to breakout rooms, and we'll be spending the rest of our evening in the breakout rooms, coming back around 8:13 or 8:14. And there are 3 questions that we're going to be answering in the rooms. I'm sending them in the chat right now. First is, how did hearing from the panelists change your perspective on housing in student and older? Oh, sorry, that's actually the questions from our last community meeting. So the moderators have the correct ones, but it's pretty much, how did hearing from the panelists change your perspective? Why do you think it's important to hear from people with lived experience? And what can we do as a community to better support our neighbors in need? And the other thing that we'll be doing is completing an exit survey in the breakout rooms if we get a chance. So Anusha is going to send a link for the exit survey in the chat right now, and we'll broadcast a message when you should begin the exit survey. But if you're in really good conversation, obviously just keep talking and we'll go ahead and send you the exit survey to fill out after the meeting. But the last thing I want to tell you all is that a couple of the rooms, if participants have changed, might just have 2 people in them or something. So don't be surprised if we plop you into another room. We want to make sure that each room has a good size of people for conversation. So yeah, Anusha, did you send the link in the chat? Yeah, I think it might not be letting her chat because she's not a co-host. So I just sent the link in the chat to the exit survey. We'll go ahead and send you all to your breakout rooms, and I'll see you back here just before 8:15. Thanks, everyone. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's good to see you all again. I hope that you enjoyed your breakout rooms and had some good conversations. We are just about done. We just want to give you 2 more quick poll questions. So we're going to go ahead and launch the closing poll with the first question. On a scale from 1 to 10, how strong of a sense do you think you have of low-income homeowners and commuters' experiences? All right, so here are the results. Looks like a lot of you have a better understanding than when you came in, which is, of course, great. I'm glad to see that. So thank you, everyone, for being here and for answering that. And we have one last poll question. What is one thing that you will do to get involved with the Cupertino Housing Element? And statistics say that if you commit to something, you're more likely to actually do it. So we are going to have you commit, and please try to actually do whatever you select. We really need your engagement with this process. And it really is a community-led process. That's something I love about the housing element. That's really unique about it, is it's a chance for your voice to really end up in policy. So choose something and then please go do it as well. All right, we're gonna give y'all like 5 more seconds. Go ahead and select something and we'll share the results. So a lot of you will attend a planning commission or city council meeting, as well as a housing element community meeting. Those are super fun. You're actually at one right now. Speak with some friends and neighbors about the housing element. Super great thing to do. Speak at a housing element public meeting. That is awesome. And all of the above. Thank you to those of you who will do all of the above. You're real go-getters. Okay, so that's all. Anusha is going to send a couple of links in the chat. One is for engagecupertino.org/housing element, and that's where you can go to get involved with Cupertino's housing element and learn more. And then also a link to the West Valley Community Services website. And go there. There's lots of resources if you need services or anything. And I'm also sending the form for the exit survey again. Please, please, please complete the exit survey if you can. It really doesn't take long. Most of the questions are optional. So even if you just answer the few that you select, we'd really appreciate it. I promise we use them. We use the responses in the housing element. So fill that out if you can. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here. You're welcome to reach out if you want. And it was really, really great to see you all. So have a good night. Bye.